Thank you. Good morning. I have the pleasure of announcing a couple of new commitments. Let me invite to the stage Sian Tesfaye. Today, Ethiopia is one of the most populous countries in the world. More than 2/3 of the country's roughly 90 million people are under the age of 25. Despite strong economic growth over the past decade and great progress in reducing poverty, Ethiopia remains one of the poorest countries worldwide, with almost 30% of all Ethiopians now living below the poverty line, according to the most recent data from the World Bank. If the government is to meet its goal of becoming a middle-income country by 2025, it will need the enthusiasm and talent of the next generation. Sian has committed to establishing Youth for Ethiopia, a 6-week summer leadership training program in Addis Ababa for high school students designed to nurture the next generation of transformational Ethiopian leaders. With the help of 6 staff members and weekly guest speakers, she hopes to introduce 60 students from 2 schools to the fundamentals of public speaking, emotional intelligence, goal setting, and the principles of asset-based community development, an approach that encourages the use of existing resources to solve problems. A student at Hamilton College, she will also expect the students to participate in community service projects and design their own assignments that put into practice what they have learned during their training, and to foster an expectation of community engagement. Going forward, she hopes to reach even more students by expanding her program to additional schools and developing young leaders who represent the future of Ethiopia. Please join me in thanking this remarkable student at Hamilton College for an extraordinary project. Now call to the stage Jennifer Meyer of Columbia University. According to recent New York City data from the Manhattan Institute for Policy Research and the Justice Mapping Center, the poorest neighborhoods in New York also have some of the highest rates of incarceration in the city. They also tend to have some of the lowest number of college graduate rates across the 5 boroughs. To reach our nation's greatest potential, we need full participation of everyone, and we can't afford to leave anyone behind. Jennifer and her team hope to help end cycles of poverty among low-income, at-risk youth and incarcerated adults in New York City by encouraging them to form partnerships and to work together for social change through joint projects that will add value to each of their respective communities. In cooperation with the Columbia School of Social Work, the program will solicit participation from at-risk youth with ideas for entrepreneurship and prisoners hoping to develop the skills they'll need to become engaged community members after they're released. Throughout the program, these young people and prisoners will come together for lessons on self-awareness and social change to work on their projects, which might range from creating a book of 6-word memoirs to organizing TED conferences at a local prison. Jennifer and her team will have participants share their projects with a wider audience at the conclusion of the program, and they hope by working together, both prisoners and young people will have a greater sense of purpose and the satisfaction that comes from giving back and staying engaged in their communities. Let's congratulate Jennifer Meyer. Okay, let me ask our participants on the panel to come and join me on the stage. Alan Khazei is the founder and CEO of Be the Change, Inc., inspired by the Gandhi quote, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." This national organization creates campaigns that are bipartisan, based on issues organized into 3 campaigns: Service Nation to promote national service as a civic rite of passage, Opportunity Nation to expand economic mobility, and Got Your Sick to support veterans and recognize them as civic assets and leaders. He serves as co-chair of the Franklin Project on National Service at the Aspen Institute. He is co-founder and former CEO of City Year, an education-focused national service program that served as a model for President Clinton's AmeriCorps program. He is also the author of Build Citizenship: How Pragmatic Idealism Can Bring Out the Best in America. Please welcome Alan Khazei. Humaira Wakili is the country director of Tomorrow's Youth Organization. She has directed TYO's operations in Palestine for almost 5 years. TYO is a multi-generational educational-based community center that leverages the best of international expertise with local capacity. Previously, she worked with a nonprofit organization in Washington, D.C., supporting the development of democracy throughout the Middle East and North Africa. She also worked at the U.S. Agency for International Development as a special assistant for the agency's basic education program and the President's initiative to expand education, where she helped develop and implement strategy for all foreign assistance in basic education for the United States government. And she designed programs focused on creative after-school education for disadvantaged youth. Please welcome Peggy Mativo is Executive Director of PACEmaker International. She's a recent Harvard University graduate where she majored in chemistry and East Asian studies while also working as a mentor and tutor at Harvard Alston Educational Portal, a campus ambassador. Was a campus ambassador with Teach for China and a captain at the Harvard Dorm Crew. She's a founder of PACE, promoting access to community education, and the Pan-African Scholars Program, both of which engage passionate, youthful volunteers to expand educational access to African students. She's a laureate global fellow with the International Youth Foundation and received a Clinton Global Initiative University Commitment of the Year Award in 2012. She's also an associate of the Harambee Entrepreneurial Alliance. Please welcome Peggy Mativo. So these are 3 really interesting people that do great work. But I'd like to start by asking them how they got started. Alan, you're sort of a serial social entrepreneur. So why don't you talk a little? You started one of these programs, the one that we know best, sitting here in your dorm room. How large was your dorm room?
Not as big as the dorm rooms here at the University of Miami. First of all, thank you, Donna. It's great to be here and great to be with such a wonderful group of panelists. I love CGIU, and it's great to be with all of you. I mean, the energy here, I've had a chance to talk to some of you, the idealism you represent, the projects you're committing to. So it's really a privilege for me to be here. My story really started with my parents. My father was a doctor. He was an immigrant from Iran, and he raised me with a really interesting perspective. He left a country of dictatorship for a country of freedom. And he taught me this is classic immigrant story. This is the greatest country in the world because it was the one he felt he could come to as a foreigner and become a citizen and contribute. And he said, you could be anything you want to be in America as long as you get a good education. And my parents made huge sacrifices. for me to get a good education, work hard and believe in America. But he also taught me that what brought him here was our country's ideals. And that when we go against our country's ideals, as we did when we helped to overthrow Mossadegh, or in supporting dictators like Marcos and Batista, et cetera, and not supporting Mandela, we pay a price. And so he taught me to really love this country and to fight for its ideals. My mother was a nurse. She was a classic Italian. She'd fall in love with you over the phone. And where my dad taught me about the world, because he came from a country with long history and democracy, my mom taught me about people. And she said that every single person has a special gift to give. And you should literally try to love everyone and bring out those gifts. And my mother really did. And so when I first heard of this idea of national service, somebody came to my high school and gave a speech on it. It just resonated with me that there should be a chance for all young people to give a year in service, come together from all different backgrounds, use their energy to make a difference. Because it sort of brought together what my parents had taught me. And so the next big thing that happened to me on September 8th, 1979, I was assigned to be roommates with Michael Brown at school, freshman day. And we both recognized we had a love for America and democracy, and also Star Trek. We were both Trekkies because it was about the future. And so we started working on this idea of national service in college together. And we both spent time on Capitol Hill. I had a chance to do a summer internship with my congressperson. I grew up in New Hampshire, Norm Demores. And Congressman Demores had served in the military, and this was back in the early 1980s. He wanted to bring back the draft. And even as a young person, I really believe in this idea. I said, well, could I do a paper for you on national service as an alternative to the draft? And he said, sure. And even as an intern on Capitol Hill, it's incredible. You get access to all these different resources, and people would answer the phone and take the meetings. And so I got a chance to dive into it. Michael was also working on the Hill that summer. And so we both dove into the issue. And then we went back and talked with our friends and said, you know, we live in the richest country in the world, and yet we have all these great problems. If we had a system of national service, we could turn on people's justice nerves. We could use the energy and idealism of young people to make a difference. And so we started working on the idea then. And then the big turning point for me, and I share this story with you, I applied to law school. My dad was all about get a professional degree, you can support yourself, you know, sort of immigrant story. So I applied to law school. I didn't want to go right away. So I deferred because I felt like I should have a, active year, and I applied for 3 different fellowships. We had at my school these traveling fellowships, and so many of you have traveled abroad. And I wanted to study national service because back in the 1980s, we didn't have it. But Israel had it, and Nigeria had it, and France and Germany and Italy had it. So I applied for 3 different fellowships, and I became the runner-up in all 3. So I failed in all 3, and now I'd already deferred law school, and my dad's saying, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. But I grew up in New Hampshire. So I met this wonderful woman, Jean Shaheen, who's now a United States Senator, and she was running Gary Hart's presidential campaign back in 1984. And then I met Gary Hart, and he was the first presidential candidate to say he would create a year of national service. And so I said, I'm going to work for this guy, because he's fighting for this idea I believe in. Now, Hart didn't win, but we did win the New Hampshire primary, and I gained great skills. Working on campaigns is a great opportunity, I'll tell you. You learn grassroots organizing skills, you work with great people, but I also made some great friends and mentors. Jean Shaheen, Billy Shore, who runs Share Our Strength, Eric Schwartz, who worked with me at City and founded Citizen Schools, and most importantly, Eli Siegel. And even as a 22-year-old, Eli put his arm around me and said, tell me your ideas. What are you interested in? And then President Clinton tapped him 8 years later to create AmeriCorps. And so in some ways it was all meant to be, but I tell you that because what I thought was initially a big failure, being turned down for those fellowships, actually turned out to be a great opportunity. My mom always said, when God closes a door, she opens a window. So even if you don't succeed at something, it may lead you to something else that's more important.
That's an incredible. Remember the lesson about failure, because it's not such a bad thing, because you learn from each one. Humaira, talk a little about the role of Palestinian youth. One of the things I pointed out to you is that the Middle East does not necessarily have a tradition of volunteerism, and it's critical for the youth center that you work with. And talk a little about, you had a long career here, and then you're now deeply invested with Palestinian youth.
Thank you. Well, first, tomorrow's International Women's Day, so I can't imagine a better time to congratulate your president, Donna, on being the new head of the Clinton Foundation. We're so excited to hear that news. So, so hard to follow that story by Alan. So my story begins, I'll quickly dive into that and then get to your question in Palestine. I was born in 1979, which is a year that most of you are not familiar with in this room, in Afghanistan. And as you know from your history books, there was a very challenging time in my country. My parents left, similarly to Alan's, to America with the idea that this was a great country and somewhere that we could seek refuge. And I'm sure, just like looking out into the audience today, seeing many of you coming from different backgrounds, I'm sure, came to this country, and I always grew up knowing how fortunate I was. I have lots of family members that didn't get out, some who didn't make it, some who are still living there. And I always really understood how lucky I was and how fortunate I was, and how in just a moment we were lucky to be able to leave, and now I have this amazing life and got to live in America. But I also knew that service had to be part of it. I knew that in some way I wanted to give back. I didn't know how exactly. I did many different things. I volunteered. And I always grew up hearing a lot about the Palestinian cause and what was going on there. But it had always been so incredibly politicized, as it still is today. But I really wanted to understand how you could affect communities that you care about and are interested in, but without having to worry about all the politics. I mean, these are still kids that need education. There's still young people who need after-school programs, women who need entrepreneurship training. And I was so lucky to find this organization, Tomorrow's Youth, which is based in Nablus, which is in the West Bank. And we were able to, by engaging with the local community, really move past all of that. And I'm not saying it was easy at first. There were a lot of people wondering, what is this American organization doing here? But working with the local community and making sure that we stayed grassroots and that we engaged university students at our local university there, but also bringing Americans. We've had close to 100 international interns so far, most of those from the States, to work side by side with young volunteers that come from the universities there. And we wanted to show the world that young people could work together, we can make a commitment, we can have real impact on the ground, and that we can kind of do it all on a level that's really all about human rights. It's not about politics. We believe every child has the right to an education no matter where they live in the world. And so that's really what we came together to do. And you're right, that culture of volunteerism doesn't really exist, but I hope with the support of the Clinton Foundation, we can start an Arab Corps in the Middle East. We would love to get young people engaged. It's not that they don't want to, and I think Peggy will probably talk more about this, but it's about leadership. And I think leadership is something really important, and it's something that's missing. We hear the news every day about what's going on in the Middle East, and I think for most people it just seems very complicated. We hear about it all the time. We don't think there's an easy solution. You hear a lot of talking heads on the news. But I think it's your generation. I think it's the young people that are sitting in this room who are really willing to make a commitment and to serve and to make an impact and to get past all of the rhetoric to say, there's some bridges that we can build here. And it just takes a little bit of commitment that something like CGI offers, CGIU. But I hope that the leadership that I've had such a wonderful experience already just in one day meeting so many of you, it's really this generation, I believe so truly, that's going to make the difference. And in the Middle East, the numbers are no different than Ethiopia, as you were talking about earlier. So many of our youth under the age of 25. And so I think that we're starting slowly, but I think this culture of volunteerism and giving back, it is growing, and I hope that we will continue that through TYO.
What's the attitude of these young people's parents? Because you have a multi-generational approach.
Well, I believe that where you're born in the world shouldn't determine your trajectory. Unfortunately, many times it does. But it shouldn't limit us. And I think that our parents, the moms and dads in Palestine want the same thing for their kids that anyone else does. They want education. They want their kids to go to school. They even want their girls to go to school. They go to university. In Palestine, we actually have more women in universities than men, but unfortunately, that number drops significantly when you look at the labor workforce because women aren't always encouraged to work after university. So we still have a lot of challenges with gender equality. But I think you'll find parents the same in a lot of parts of the world. I think they really support, especially what TYO is doing. They're very supportive, and they don't feel that they have the tools. They want to do better for their children. They want to support, but the mothers that we work with, what they always ask us is, give us the tools, give us the skills. We don't have that kind of support. And I think that's what's unique about our program is we work with the whole family. We're not focusing just on the youth sector or just on early childhood education. We focus on all of it together as a package.
Thank you very much. Now, Peggy, your story is interesting because Alan went to your school, right? And
Yes,
gave
he
a
did.
speech.
Yes, he did. So this was my senior year. I graduated last year in May. But I remember Alan coming to my dorm room and talking about City Year and, how awesome. Well, I just got the impression that there's so many awesome young people in service that, you could look and see the 25 years of work boiling down to this level of inspiration that, was just unique and you lived in the moment. But for me, what Alan's speech also did was sort of give me a picture of the future. Of what Kenya could look like. So I'm from Kenya, and my first gap year experience was right after 12th grade. There's a mandatory gap year. You're out of school for about 9 months, and there's nothing to do if you're not in college or taking a computer class. So there's all this unstructured time on your hands, and as a young person, you're wondering, what can I do? So during that time, I volunteered in a children's home called Hope House Babies Home. And, working with babies, changing diapers, cleaning floors felt a lot more magical and a lot more impactful than if I was doing it back at home. So I thought, this is awesome. How can we get more young people into this space? Later on, I volunteered in Tanzania, and so, that there was a big shortage of teachers. The teachers were actually, the teachers in the school were about your age. So the age of the person to your right or to your left. And I asked the head teacher, why are your teachers so young? And she told me that whenever government teachers would get sent there, they'd leave because the area was, there's no electricity, no water, it's not comfortable to live in. So she had to hire her graduating 12th graders to go in and teach. So I realized there's an idea here, but it needs some refinement because, a 12th grader or just someone in college teaching a whole class of about 50 kids by themselves, they're probably overwhelmed. So my commitment started as a question of how do you prepare young people to support classrooms that actually have a shortage of teachers? And so what I did on the more practical side is, you scribble down a one paragraph. I went on Facebook, shared the idea with a few friends, went on SurveyMonkey, and just asked some Kenyan young people, would you actually be willing to volunteer? Do you think you could make a difference? What would stand in your way? So after asking about 116 Kenyan young people, do you want to make a difference? And are you aware that there's a problem? And getting about 84% saying yes. Then I took this to my parents. I told them, I would like to take a gap year from college. I'd like to take a break from Harvard and actually come home and start a service organization. My country doesn't have a vibrant national service program. So I said, I want to start the first volunteer service program in Kenya. And my parents were, they were a bit skeptical, as most parents would be. And they asked, so why do this? Why not wait till after you finish college? But, the realization that there's a gap, but there's also all these young people going through schools in Kenya and getting shortchanged in terms of the quality of education they receive. And that young people like yourselves, young people like myself, could give 6 months and actually make a difference to these kids. So that helped convince my parents, but it also gave me the conviction I needed. And the fact that I'd done sort of the practical research and gotten all the SurveyMonkey answers also made my parents a lot more confident that this could actually work.
Oh, thank you very much. That's wonderful. Alan, we started with institutional structures for national service. Really starting with the Peace Corps. And it sounds, when you listen to Peggy, like there's a new generation of organizations, not just traditional NGOs. And tell us a little about what you see in the future in terms of service.
I think it's a very exciting time. I love what Humaira's doing, what Peggy, you're doing. I mean, and your story is a great story. I mean, it's part of the reason why I so believe in national. You basically did a year of national service, and now you're going to bring national service to Kenya. And so I'm a passionate believer in this, and I think it is evolving. I mean, AmeriCorps is, Peace Corps, starting with Peace Corps, and then BISTA, and then AmeriCorps, thanks to President Clinton. It's now expanding through the Franklin Project, and I'm excited that Donna serves on our leadership council, along with General Stanley McChrystal and Madeleine Albright and others, that we are trying to promote this idea, and also through Service Nation, one of the organizations we work with under Be the Change. But I think basically your generation, the concept of social entrepreneurship is rampant. There are courses on it, there are service learning courses, and so we are getting new models every day. And one of the things we're doing is building a new technology platform, which will go live a year from now. This is Shirley Sagawa's brilliant idea that will make it possible for any not-for-profit to register and become certified as a national service organization. And I think we have to take this idea to scale. We have other models. I see Mindy Luber here in the audience from Tufts, who helps run the Tisch School. Tufts has started a new program called 1+4. Starting this fall, young people can apply to a 4-year degree and a 5-year degree. And if you get into the 5-year degree program, the first year is going to be a service year. But the really great thing about it is if you're financial aid eligible, Tufts will help pay for your service year. Because traditionally, folks who do a gap year, it's often from upper income families who can afford to float them. That's a breakthrough model. If every school in America does what Tufts is doing and commits to getting to 10% of their freshman class as Tufts is committed to, that'd be 100,000 more people doing national service, more than serve in AmeriCorps right now. So, and also I think internationally, Peace Corps is fabulous, and we should actually grow the Peace Corps. But we also have to do what Humaira's doing and what Peggy's doing, is work with countries to help them develop their own service programs indigenously, so that Americans can serve side by side with people who are from those countries. Wouldn't it be fabulous to have a global service corps in the 21st century? I love people talking about global citizenship. Well, we brought together young people. I mean, look at this room. It's so inspiring. Imagine a service corps that had Africans and Asians and Middle Easterns and Europeans and South Americans and North Americans all working together on issues that we all care about: climate change, poverty, AIDS, other health issues, education. That's what the 21st century can be about. And frankly, you can lead the way. You're already there, but you have to push for it and advocate for it and get our leaders to take you seriously.
Thank you very much. I want to take up one of those themes. Humaira, you actually are integrating international volunteers, right, into your program. Do you want to talk a little about those opportunities?
Sure. So being based in Palestine, one of the things that we really wanted to do, and we're in the northern part, which is has been very isolated, especially during and after the second Intifada. We are and have been the only American NGO that's been based there since as long as, at least since we've been operating since about 2007, 2008. And our founder, who is a Palestinian American actually, really had the vision and the foresight to say, while everyone else, and this happens in a lot of developing countries, right? Everyone kind of goes to the city capital and all the NGOs kind of flood one part. We took a different approach and said, let's go somewhere where no one else is going. Let's go to the underserved communities. It might not so comfortable to live, but this is where the need really is. So we went to Nablus and we brought interns over from the States. And these are a mix of young college students that are welcome. Our program is year-long, so there's a spring, summer, and fall, winter session. So we also have lots of graduate students, graduates, gap year, whenever people can come. So we have applications that are sort of on a rolling basis. But we brought young people over, and the idea was that we didn't want it to be volunteerism. I'm sure you've heard this phrase a little bit. We wanted real impact. People have to pay their own way to get there. We have pretty generous room and board, but you have to pay your way to get there. And I really believe that if you're going to do that and you're going to spend 3 months with us, you should walk away feeling that you gained just as much as you're leaving behind. And so we've really made it a professional development internship. I think the reason why it's so successful is that young people have come over and have felt, I learned more here, and I hate to say this here, but quote, I've learned more here than I did 4 years in college in these 3 months. And that's what we love. I want people to walk away knowing that they felt like they made an impact. We've all done internships where you walk away and kind of go, I don't know if that really, did that make an impact? Did I change anyone's life? What was the past year or 6 months? What was that about? So we want people to know that when they leave, and you get the instant gratification, right? Because you get to work with kids every day. You get to work at the university. You get to work with young women entrepreneurs. So you're getting to see what you're doing firsthand. So I think that was really important for us. And the best part is like you mentioned, we're doing it with our local volunteers as well. So it's all about growing the capacity of young Palestinians, but doing it side by side with some of their international counterparts who have wonderful expertise and knowledge to share. And I would also just like to say very quickly that I'm a little bit older than you guys, but not much. I remember when I was growing up, it was all about what university you went to, and that made such a big difference. And it was like, oh, you didn't go to an Ivy League. I mean, I went to San Diego State University, I had people say, well, you're never going to get a job. It's a party school, and I mean, I didn't, but. I was very concerned about that. And then as I got older and I got into a position now that I'm hiring people and bringing interns, I don't look at universities. I don't look at where people went. I mean, the best interns that I have had have gone to these very small community or, state, just colleges I hadn't even heard of. I had to look up. And they were the best. They had social skills. And yes, I work in international development, but I think in any employment avenue that you are searching for, I mean, these kind of social skills that like doing service gives you, people skills, understanding the world, 21st century skills, as some of us call it, it's so important. So I can just see what a huge shift that has made since, maybe 10 or 20 years ago, where you go to school now is probably a little bit less important than what you did while you were there.
I hope you're getting nuggets here of wisdom. Now, let's get another set of nuggets of wisdom from Peggy, because Peggy, you once sat out there. You were a CGI-er. I guess I just invented that. And you were once in that audience, and you used that experience to help build your organization, and you actually networked because of that. You want to talk a little about how you use sitting out in that audience to help build a career and but more importantly, your organization?
All right. So I remember my first CGIU and coming here, and all I had was an idea that was a few paragraphs long. I came in, I'm a bit of a quiet person, and you come into this big sea of very talkative, very, very energetic, this big room of people.
Did you
and
say talkative? Talkative.
Talkative, but also just so much energy. And initially I felt overwhelmed. I was just like, oh, am I meeting enough people? Am I doing enough? Will this actually take off? Or is it just going to be, I came for a weekend and made a few Facebook friends and then left? But a few things that really were helpful at CGI when I was here. I remember I took a few pictures, good for branding, good for credibility. And just, that was super important. When I just had an idea, capturing this moment and saying, oh, I was at CGI actually gave me extra credibility. But also the friends I made here. When you were just rolling out your idea and you ask people on Facebook, is this interesting or do you think this could work? Some people will say no. You need a bunch of cheerleaders from CGIU who will say, yes, go for it. So the friends I made here and stayed in touch with were really, really helpful in that particular way. And then during the summer, I don't know if they still do this, but the first summer, they had a bunch of workshops online. And I remember attending a few of the skills workshops. One was on monitoring and evaluation, which really helped me. My organization or my idea was used as a case study. So just sitting through that gave me a whole new skill set that I would actually need for much later. I didn't know it then. But then also sharing and giving feedback afterwards of this is how my idea is going, these are the challenges I'm experiencing. Just staying in touch with the CGIU team. The following September, I was actually invited to come to CGI in New York and, got to network and meet more amazing people and also get some potential, leads, connections for funding, but people who could also help take my idea to the next level. So it's a sort of that communication principle, but also staying in touch with people and just leveraging the credibility that comes from the space.
That's I think, very good advice. Humaira, what advice would you give to these young people in terms of whether it's networking or, I tell people, never eat lunch at your desk. Always go meet with someone, even if you're sitting on a bench with a brown bag.
I would say you have to work hard. And what I mean, you all know that already, but what I mean by that is we're not all going to be 25-year-old CEOs with a corner office. I've got bad news for you. I think what I would really push for this generation is to put your head down, not necessarily at lunchtime, but really there is so much to learn, and that's really what this time of your life is for. And I think that we can't skip steps. You know, we all want to, you know, especially those of us who are working in the field that I'm working in, I see so many young people that just, you know, I ask them, like, you know, what do you want to do? And they say, I want to bring peace to the Middle East. And I'm like, that is great. You know, that is a wonderful goal. But maybe we can, you know, think about, like, you know, steps and a strategy. So I think the most important thing is seeing initiatives like what Peggy's doing, you know, really starting from a really solid base, putting in the hard work, paying your dues, as we called it in my generation, is so important. And I really encourage you guys not to let the pressures that I think your generation has felt a little bit differently, which is just this idea that you can't fail and you have to succeed. And at 25, you know, we all need to be coming up with, like, the next Facebook, and I think that's just so unobtainable, and I don't think that even does anyone any good, really, to have those kind of goals. I encourage you guys to try things, do what you love, that you're passionate about, and don't be afraid to fail. I mean, we all know this. I'm sure you've heard this a million times, but really, I mean, all these successful business entrepreneurs, they didn't all get it the first try. And I think that I would just really hope that you walk away with CGI. Even if your commitment changes what you thought you wanted to do, that's wonderful. I mean, that's growth, that's evolution. You shouldn't be the same person you were a year ago. And so I would really encourage you all to think about that and to not be so weighed down with the expectations that I think we've sort of poorly put on you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Alan, words of advice?
Sure. A couple things. So I mentioned I was assigned to be roommates with Michael Brown. Michael and I started City Year together, and so whenever people come to me and say, I have an idea for an organization, I always say, well, try to find a partner and build a team. Nobody changes the world by themselves. Nobody creates anything by themselves. And this is a great opportunity to meet people, make friends, build your network. But if you want to start something, it's about the team. Second thing is we read Sun Tzu's The Art of War, which is really about strategy. And Sun Tzu, this ancient Chinese philosopher, says, every battle is won or lost before it is fought. Meaning it's all about the training, the preparation, the planning. So you have to think about where do you want to be and then work backwards. Third thing I would say is pilot things. We started City Year with an 8-week pilot program. We wanted a full year of service, but we realized it was a new idea, and maybe we couldn't raise the money for a full year program. We wanted to test it out. We wanted to learn. And so we started with a summer pilot. So you might have a really big idea, and we started just with 50 young people for 8 weeks. So that's another one. The other thing I've learned is what I'd call the guardian angel maxim, which is, and you'll feel it here at CGIU, you know, when you start something out, you're going to get a lot of no's. I mean, we didn't raise any money for City Year for the first 7 months. We kept knocking on doors and meeting with people and say, oh, that's a really nice idea. Well, good luck with it. But we kept feeling, well, eventually somebody's going to say yes. And they did. And what I've learned is if you're pursuing social justice, there is a spirit out there. Eventually you will meet people who will open doors for you, who will want to help you. You'll meet them here. They could be colleagues that you meet here, other students. They could be mentors, etc. If you're, you know, something will happen that will come through for you. So don't get discouraged. And also what Donna said, learn from your mistakes. The other thing that I learned is when you're starting something, you have to figure out what is essentially core to your idea. What's at its fundamental integrity? And don't compromise on that. So for example, we were starting City Year, we wanted national service to be for everybody because we thought it's a great way to unite the country. Different races, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different religious beliefs, sexual orientation, etc. A lot of people said to us, well, why don't you just do that for disadvantaged young people? They need it the most. And we'll give you money for that. And we said, no, that's not what our idea is about. We think this is about uniting the country. And so we didn't compromise on that. But we were flexible in everything else, stuff that isn't. So initially, we thought we should have a 12-month program, go 12 months a year. And then through our pilot program, we actually interviewed every single corps member. And the thing we kept hearing is, we like this idea, but you should do 10 months. Don't do 12 months, because people our age are used to having their summers free. Also, you're not going to pay that much. There's going to be a stipend and then a post-service award. If you do it September through June, people still get their summers, they can get other summer opportunities, they won't feel like, wow, they're burning themselves out. And so we totally changed that. Basically listening, that's the other thing I would say is listen to your clients, listen to your constituents. You have to get to the ground level and listen to people on the ground at the grassroots. We listen to them, we listen to service partners, and change your model, change your idea, informed by the people you're working the most closely with. But the other thing I would say is go for it. You're young enough now. I mean, I had a meeting with a mentor when I was your age, and one of the things they said to me, which I never forgot, is take risks in your 20s. Because you probably aren't married, you probably don't have a mortgage, you probably don't have kids to support. As life goes on, you have other responsibilities, but it's in your 20s when you can take risks. So if you have a burning idea, a burning passion, go for it. And hopefully you'll succeed, but if you don't, you can learn from the failure. But take that risk now, because it gets harder as you get older.
Great advice. That's such good advice. Now, this is an opportunity for you to ask our panelists questions. Back there. Introduce yourself.
East Bay in Hayward, California. I'm excited to share that I'm here with a group of 6 students, and the first time CSU East Bay people have ever been to CGIU. I'm also excited there's another CSU alum on stage. Humaira, I have 2 questions for you, and then I welcome the other folks on stage to answer. As someone that's just starting an on-campus sustainability program, that's an internship program, going into year 2 next year, what would you recommend as a best practice for engaging people in a program? And then also, what do you recommend as a top skill that students should come out of an internship program with?
Very good question.
Crisp.
So I think for your first question in terms of how to engage interns, I think the most important thing you have to do is to find the skills, not the cause. So a lot of people, and this is again just from my own experience, I don't look for interns that are necessarily that interested in the Middle East. Even though that's where we're based. I look for people who have skills, that have teaching skills, whether that's what the internship is for at that time, whether it's entrepreneurship, business development, whatever it is that we're looking for. Because it's easy to kind of find people who are interested in sort of a larger cause, like if you happen to mention a buzzword, it might get some people excited, but do they really have the skills that you're looking for? And that really, at the end of the day, they're going to want to feel like they had some sort of impact and that they walk away from it too. So that's one piece of advice I could give. And the second, in terms of, I think your question was, what skill sets they should walk away? Again, I think that we're just living, I know we hear this so much that we're living this kind of globally interconnected world, but it's just so sad to me about how I really don't feel that that's true as much, because I feel like we're all connected through technology, not through real people-to-people skills. So, I think one of the things that you should strive for is to make sure that young people have that opportunity to step away from what they're usually doing in their daily life, which is so, being on their phones and being kind of connected technologically, but forgetting those really important people skills that are necessary. No matter what your on-campus initiative is, I think no matter what you're interested in doing, I think that's something really lacking and really important that we need to kind of refocus on.
Mm-hmm. Why don't we leave it there? But there's a balance between pursuing something you're passionate about and going into depth in it, and acquiring skills by not repeating the same kind of internships. So, because we ask the question, what have you learned in each of the experiences that you've had? Because that cumulated effect is really the list of skills. When we're looking to hire people, we want to know what you've learned as opposed to what fancy companies you've worked for, or what community organizations you've worked with. So there's a balance between the two, I think. Let's go right here. Introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is William Bain. I'm going to bring education to South Sudan, where I was born. So I left South Sudan to come to the United States to get education because education was so difficult. It was difficult to get education in South Sudan. So I came here, I got my education. I feel like it's my responsibility to bring it home. So I've been doing legal stuff for my foundation, but right now it's time for me to find the people. So I feel like I'm driving a bus and I need to get the right people on the bus. So how do I go about that? How do I know the right person to get into my bus?
Alan, you want to take that one on?
Sure, William. Well, first of all, thank you for your commitment to bring education back to South Sudan. I think it starts with people's values. So, you know, you have to connect. Do they share your values and do they share your passion for your mission? I think that's first, because if they don't, the work you're doing is hard. And if it isn't deep in their soul, they won't stick it out. So I would start there. Secondly, I would think about, well, what skill set do you need? So do you need people who are good at technology? Do you need people who are good at program development, et cetera? And then look for folks and see, well, are you passionate about doing this kind of thing? The third thing I would look at is, how does the whole team fit together? As I said, it's all about the team. And it's the right people on the bus. It's also the right people in the right seats. So I think about, well, what do we really need? So when we were starting City Year, we needed somebody who's going to be good at developing the service project, somebody else who could connect with young people to help recruit them, somebody else who could help with the fundraising. And so we looked at who was passionate about that and be very upfront with them. The other thing I would ask them is about their, I think as Humaira said this and also Peggy's shown this, is their determination to stick with it. And are they willing to work hard in long hours? When you're starting something, it's 24/7. You've got to really live it, eat it, breathe it. So I'd be very upfront about that with folks. But this is a great place to find people, also in schools, and you can find them, you know, virtually everywhere as long as they line up with your values, your passion, the mission for what you're pursuing.
Yeah, but just to add on that, because I faced a special geographical challenge as well. I was here for my senior year, and my initiative was in Kenya. So you need to think about the geography of the people as well. Like, who will be in South Sudan, who will be managing affairs on the ground while you're here, and then again, will they be available? Do they have a part-time job, or are they just going to jump into this, and what resources will they need to support themselves? So it comes down to the passion, but also the practicality of it. Will they be available physically?
Great. Back there. Yes. Introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Drilona, and I'm from Kosovo. My commitment is integrating agriculture in our educational system because it's absolutely a sector that has potential for growth, yet is not being viewed as a cool sector to be in, especially from young people. I'm very passionate about this project, and I believe that that's the future of our country, instead of everybody wanting to have an office job. If I had the option, I would not prefer to have an office job, to be honest. So what is one advice on how to make these young people passionate about agriculture and other sectors that are not necessarily viewed as cool and not necessarily what their parents sometimes want them to do? Thank you.
Oh, that's a hard one. I don't think you can make people passionate about anything.
You can make some things cool, though.
You can make some things cool. Get Taylor Swift to write a couple lines about agriculture. That should work. I don't think you can make people passionate about something, and I don't think those are the people that you want to look for. I think the idea is most people connect on a human level, right? Like agriculture, it's like what we eat. It's very close to every human being. And in your country, you know, I think economic security is very important for young people. And I think it's all about how you engage and approach, right? Like if you just want to go straight at it from agriculture, I find the same challenges. My organization, our main focus is early childhood education. But every time I meet with a donor, they say, so tell me what you're doing in high tech and like universities, and can we donate some more computers to you? And I say, well, my kids can't read and write, so I don't need any more laptops yet. But it's challenging because they want to push me towards what they want or what they think is cool. And they think when I start talking about psychosocial approach to early childhood education, they just are like, you know, the eyes glaze over. And so you have to stick with what you believe in and your passion, but I would say you have to just try to find the right niche, and whether that's using social media or whether it's approaching it. Because so the question is okay, so why is agriculture important? obviously there's a reason why you think it's important. You need to tell your story. And I think that's the way to get young people connected, especially because if they just hear that, you know, you're probably not going to get too many people on board. But if you tell a story about why it's important and why it affects your country, I'm sure economic security has a lot to do with it as well. I think that's a great way to get started.
You've heard two people talk, really tell a story of integrity. That is, they knew what they wanted to do, and they weren't prepared to compromise the core of their organizations, even though they were offered resources to do that. Next question, all the way back, in the white shirt. That's what happens when you have a white shirt.
Hi, Isaac Hutton, representing Nazareth College in Rochester, New York. I'm wondering, what have you learned through service that you could not have learned in a classroom?
Peggy.
That's a great question. So, the doing for others and getting that instant satisfaction, but that it doesn't have to. I think that the main lesson from my service experience has been that my time is valuable, and that I can give it to someone else, and that's a choice. And I'll even explain that in the work we do as well. When we have people volunteer, we convert the hours they do into money. So when we're speaking about what have young people in our organization contributed to the Kenyan economy, we say, oh, we've contributed 1.5 million shillings, and this is how we know we've done it. But the idea that my time is valuable and giving it as a choice, I could sit in class and be bored, but if I am doing something that's making life better for someone else, then my time increases in value.
Thank you. I'd love to have some more questions, but I want to move you into discussion groups, your own groups, and I think that your conversation should be whatever you want it to be, given your experience here, and then I'll ask some of you to report on what you think. Number one, what you've learned here, but number two, I think the last question, that is, what more do you want to learn? And that will help us. So start talking among yourselves. I'll give you about 11 minutes.